Hello, everyone. How wonderful we are together in this intimate universe, evolving. We are one mountain, many paths, where our mission is what Barbara Marx Hubbard and Dr. Marc Gafni call a planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphonies. We activate a new humanity and awaken as a new species. Homo amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapiens. As a church, synagogue, mosque, temple, zendo, no one is excluded, everyone is included, and we come together to attune to the evolutionary impulse awakening within us. Welcome home, everyone. I am Kristina Tehel, the co-executive producer, along with Krista Josepha, Jacqueline Clark, and Jamie Long, and we are so delighted to be together with each and every one of you today in week 265 of our live community broadcast. What a privilege it is to be part of this global community where we contribute to humanity's thriving. This is our last week to join our unique bi-monthly Thursday Dharma Circle of Cutting Edge Dharma Talks by Dr. Marc Gafni and intimate practice sessions with Claire Molinar and Shahat Corden, along with one-on-one Homo Amor circles of this global community. The Dharma Circle is a holy study of the Dharma of unique self, outrageous love, Homo Amor, the universal love story, first principles, first values, and other core topics from Dr. Marc Gafni's cosmo-erotic humanism teachings. Reach out to Shahat, whose email is in the chat box now. Main teachings from One Mountain, Many Paths are also in books by Dr. Marc Gafni and Barbara Marx Hubbard on our website resources page at onemountainmanypaths.org. You will find books like Emergence, The Shift from Ego to Essence by Barbara Marx Hubbard, which is an unprecedented journey from the ordinary human seeking creature comforts to extraordinary human co-creating the future. Receive mystical gifts, step closer into the new universe story, and create with us our great library, our Da Vinci Project, the Homo Amor Library, Memory of the Future. We train and work with transcribers, editors, and translators. We give a shout out this week to Timothy Paul Are, who with absolutely holy devotion is organizing, researching, and editing for our great library Da Vinci Project. Thank you so much, Timothy Paul. Reach out to me for the holy opportunities. My email is in the chat box now. Use the Zoom and chat and Facebook chat functions to say hello, to let us know where you're from, to pray, and to resonate the Dharma. On Zoom, check that your chat settings say everyone, so we can all hear from you. Sign up for and read our weekly emails. There you find our replays, community activities, feature videos, volunteer opportunities, celebrations, and surprise and inspiration. What to expect today? First, a Dharma recap from myself from last week's One Mountain, Many Paths. Then Dr. Marc Gafni sets our intention. Krista invites us deeper into community. David resonates our evolutionary love code. Then we move into evolutionary sermon with Dr. Marc Gafni and sometimes from Barbara Marx Hubbard. To close, we bring everyone on for an intimate dance practice and our goodbyes. Marc writes Evolutionary Love Codes. Marc and Barbara studied the codes together, comparing them with Barbara's own 52 codes for conscious self-evolution. These codes grow out of a radical commitment, crystallizing the new story of humanity, quote, evolving the course of consciousness and culture, which is the source code of love, unquote. We have the privilege of front row seats in the emergence of these first principles and first values. As Dr. Marc Gafni often says, the Dharma gates are open. Every week, we are blessed with an explosion of brilliant new Dharma, like this week when we get the Dharma around the movie Dune. To serve each other and the evolution of love, our commitment is to the quality of what we are communicating, and for each of us to take part in this creative process of articulating a new story for a new humanity. Given all of this, we have consciously decided to forcefully try to end at exactly a certain time won't serve the evolutionary process that we're in. Instead, our promise is what we call fullness and explosion, to let magic evolve. So even though we will do our best to end at 11 a.m. Pacific time, sometimes we will go overtime. Of course, if you need to leave, please do and watch the replay. I welcome all who are new. We need you. Know that each week is a standalone and every week does build on the week before. One mountain, many paths is radically committed to telling the new universe story. So here goes my recap from last week. God needs my story. My life is a sacred autobiography written in the one heart of the divine. God, the infinity of intimacy that knows our name. God, the incessant, ceaseless creativity of cosmos that inheres in all of reality, that holds us every second, that not just madly loves our story, but needs our story. God is yearning. God is yearning for something. Infinite God can't actually realize the full potential of divinity itself without manifesting as reality. There's something that becomes more by us participating in the great sacred autobiography of God, in which our story is chapter and verse. Greek author Nikos Kazantzakis sums up the lineage of the new story and its integration of reality and all of the interior and exterior of physics by saying, "We are the saviors of God." The old story, in the way it's being told today, is leading us personally to extinction through either the death of humanity or via techno-feudalism, the death of our humanity. The old story won't move us through this 11th hour, won't allow us to flourish, and doesn't meet our experiences. There's new information, depth, potentiality, possibility. We bring this newness of physics, molecular biology, evolutionary science, emergent science, and multiculturalism. We weave this new information together. We synergize. The transformation of reality from an alienated global intimacy disorder to a global family that's omniconsiderate for the sake of the whole is the only response to existential risk. We have a new story of who am I, of who are you, of who are we to each other, and where are we? We are the story of reality come alive inside of us. That new story generates new intimacy. We are not strangers anymore. We are family. We're evolutionary family. We are a covenant between generations, humanity together as a whole, creating something new, a movement in history, the evolution of love, the evolution of God. There are movements in culture against story. These movements are wrong. These movements, yes, we do need to move beyond our victim story. Distinguish between your victim story and your unique self story. Distinguish between your sacred autobiography and the loops you're stuck in. Mythologize, do not pathologize. Reality is not a cruel joke. Yes, things often don't get resolved in this lifetime, but it's not about moving beyond your story. The new story is a revisioning and a re-understanding of story itself, that our story is part of the sacred autobiography of God, that the whole evolutionary story lives in us. Evolution begins with quarks and goes all the way up through us, where it gets more and more unique, conscious, creative, and caring. Our stories matter, ultimately. That's an evolutionary love story. We can't just be the hero of our own life. We need to be the hero of life itself. Now, I invite us to more deeply enter into the holy and sacred space of one mountain, many paths. And I turn my word to you, Dr. Marc Gafni.
So just thank you so much to Haley. And it is so fantastic to be together, so wondrous to be together. And that's the beginning of our intention. We don't take this for granted. We are in this moment between utopia and dystopia. We're in this moment in which the overwhelming moral, existential, and ecstatic imperative of this time is to respond to existential risk with a new story, of cosmos, and a new story of self, and a new story of desire, and a new story of politics, and a new story of relationships. And that our particular journey of transformation participates in that larger journey. And Shahat, I'm talking to one of our wonderful friends, Shahati, when we texted about a particular website, right? And I was trying to share with you what is utterly unique, right, about what we're doing, right, is precisely that. It's that bringing together of the need to tell the cosmic story and of my story of personal transformation, understanding that those stories aren't separate from each other at all, that those two stories are interlayered with each other, they're intertextured with each other, that the personal doesn't stand against the impersonal, let's say, of the Buddhist story, nor does it stand against the political or the evolutionary sweep of the story. The personal is at the very core of everything. My realization that my personal love story is chapter and verse in the universal love story, that I'm a storyteller of evolution, that evolution lives in me, that the story of evolution is undone, and that the new story that we tell that integrates the best of validated insights in the great traditional period of pre-modernity and the best insights of modernity and the best insights of post-modernity and tells a new story is what's going to actually transform reality. Because the only thing that ever transforms reality is a new story. We understand that anthropologically. It's only a new story that changes the vector of history. And there's very few things upon which I agree with my colleague Yuval Harari, but this is one of them, right? He understands, and we understand this together, that historically, and Yuval's field is history, historically, it's a new story that changes the vector of history. Now, for Yuval, that new story is a fiction. It's made up. Because for Yuval, Yuval's worldview is materialist. Spirit's not real, ultimately. Right? Ethics are not real. Right? They don't participate in a larger reality beyond social construction, beyond figments of our imagination, which for Yuval is a materialistic, small imagination. And that's where Yuval goes wrong. But the correct insight is that story matters. And that actually reality is the evolution of story. Telling the best story. Not the conjecture, not the contrived story, not the made-up story, but the best story of reality in which we participate as storytellers, as writers of the next chapter, as key actors. Right? That is, right, the great moral imperative of this time. And the breakdown in reality today is at its core a breakdown of story. We're not living in a shared story of destiny, right? We're bound more and more of the world is realizing that we're bound inexorably by a shared fate. We thought we didn't have a shared fate. We thought each country, each nationalism, each region should go on its way. But we now understand in a world beset by exponential risk across multiple vectors that it's actually one world. We understand that we have a shared fate. But what we don't understand is that we can't respond to that shared fate by infrastructure initiatives. We've got to respond to that shared fate by the articulation of a shared destiny. And a shared destiny emerges out of a shared story, out of a universal grammar of value, right? Rooted in first principles and first values. And that new story has to be so self-evidently compelling, so self-evidently good, so self-evidently true, so self-evidently beautiful that we all want to get on Netflix, right? But the Netflix of cosmic reality, and we can't bear to miss an episode, and we're actually starring in the episodes themselves. Wow. Like, wow. So now what we're going to do today, and I am super excited to do it, is we're going to look at a story. Now, we're not going to look at a story, and we're going to look at a story this week and next week. If you miss this week, you can come next week. If someone happens to be watching the replay, I guess that's definitionally impossible. If you're watching the replay, you would have gotten this week. But this week and next week will be standalone, but will also be interrelated. So we're going to do this for 2 weeks. And we're going to, as a spiritual political practice in the evolution of love, we're going to take a particular story. We're going to take Dune, right, which is a major set of novels written in 1965 by Frank Herbert, and then continued when Herbert died by his son Brian Herbert, who wrote with Kevin Anderson. Kevin Anderson also wrote the first, together with George Lucas, right, the screenplay of Star Wars. Interesting story, and the relationship between Star Wars and Dune is interesting. We're not going to talk about it today. But we're going to look at Dune, not because we think Dune is necessarily all-wise, right? Dune is interesting, important, but it's because it's a story that's now again coming to the center of culture, right? The sci-fi Dune story exploded out of the sci-fi community, became a major story in the late 60s, 70s, 80s. You know, in 1984, David Lynch made a kind of failed cinematic adaptation of Dune that he actually took his name off in the end. He said that the producers had forced him not to have a final cut, and he actually dissociated from the movie. Lynch actually turned down the invitation to direct Return of the Jedi in order to do his version of Dune. Didn't go well. But in the 80s, Dune was still at the center of culture, and it's remained so, and now it's been brought back again to the center of the culture, and it's a story. So we're going to look at this story. Is this an evolutionary story, right? Is it an important story? What's right about the story? What's off about the story? Because remember, the prism is story. The reason Dune is on the big screen now is because it's telling a large story, and there's a yearning to participate in the large story. So we're going to look at Dune this week and next week as a spiritual practice, as a meditative practice, as what my friend the Dalai Lama calls, right? He shared this with me in Dharamsala in his home. He calls it an analytic meditation. Let's actually do, and we call it in Kabbalah, in Hebrew wisdom, we call it hitbonenut, right? A deep contemplation. We're going to contemplate this story in order to play a larger game, in order to actually see through the mists of culture and understand where we need to go and articulate that together, right? As evolutionary, revolutionary storytellers, right? Engaging in creating, right, a new politics of eros, a new politics of evolutionary love, right? So that's what we're here for. It's big. That's big. Are you ready? Are we ready? Are we ready to play a larger game? Are we ready to play a larger game? Are we? Yes. Are we ready to participate? Are we ready to participate, right, in the evolution of love? Oh my God. Let's do this. This is a huge week, right? Krista, we turn the word to you with great delight. Oh my God.
Yes, thank you. Are we ready to participate in the evolution of love? And I just want to begin by feeling into this joy of being here together and feeling that we are this band of outrageous lovers and that we are the ones that we get to tell this new story and share it in our unique corner of the world. So I just want to sing this for you and with you. If you know some of the lyrics of the Dharma, please sing along. Outrageous acts of love. We are needed, we are desired. Let's commit our outrageous acts of love. We are needed, we are desired. We are needed, we are desired by all that is. We are needed, we are desired by all that is. I just wanted to share a moment. Of that joy with you, to feel how we are together, all needed to bring this revolution to the next level. And I want to invite all of us to step in whatever way that feels good for you, to step in and participate. And I want to share one particular way that you can do that. And that is, Marc already mentioned it. We share every week the replay of this live stream, and we create that together in an amazing, exciting team. And that's a beautiful way to be immersed in the Dharma throughout the week and to listen to the replay again. And one of the things we really need help with is someone to listen to the replay and to find places that maybe we need to edit. So the only task is listen to it, immerse yourself in the beauty of the Dharma, and write down the places that you hear glitches or things that we need to take out. So if you feel alert to that particular needs, then please reach out to me or to Jacqueline. We'll put our email in the chat box, and we would be very excited to work together with you on this. And of course, the other way to step in and to support this revolution is by becoming a member of One Mountain. And this is an amazing gift to yourself foremost, because it's a beautiful way to connect to the community, to join the study groups, the writing groups, and to really deepen your connection with this Dharma. Because as a member of One Mountain, you get access to 9 deep dive courses with Marc Gafni and Barbara Marx Hubbard, and also one course with Daniel Smachtenberger, which is an amazing opportunity for you to become this new story yourself. So I just want to show you, for those of you who don't know it yet, where you can do that. If you go to the website, onemountainmanypaths.org, and you click here on membership, that's where you can read all about becoming a member. And we just want to make this Dharma, this new story, available to, like we say, every corner of this world. So we decided to make it available already for $25 a month, just to make it possible for anyone to join. But we do want to ask and encourage everyone to give as much as you can. So most of our community members give $100 a month, which is totally amazing. And we encourage you to do the same. If you scroll all the way down, you will find the beautiful courses that you get access to. So right after One Mountain, just take a moment to look at this, sign up to become a member, and I can't wait to meet you inside. And with that, I give my words back, not to you, but to David, actually, to read our code. Thank you, David.
Leading the way with your voice and your invitation. So friends, today we have a new code that actually frames our conversation about Dune, which Marc is going to unpack. So this relates to the question for me in my own heart of how do I discern my path, right? How do I navigate what's reality needs of me? And this code helps to clarify in this postmodern world where leadership is being deconstructed, what we need for discernment here. So this week's evolutionary love code. We need leaders. We need messiahs. But we don't just need messiahs. Messiahs alone are dangerous. We need dharma in dialectical relationship to messiahs. Messiahs, not in devotion to dharma, always become corrupt. We need a world in which every man and every woman is literally a messiah. And with that, I turn my word to you, beloved Dr. Marc.
Let's take a look at that code right together again for a second, right? Let's take a look at the code. Right, and this is the code that we're going to use to kind of work through Dune, right? We need leaders. We need messiahs. We don't just need messiahs. Messiahs alone are dangerous. We need dharma and dialectical relationship to messiahs. Messiahs not in devotion to dharma always become corrupt. We need a world in which every man and every woman is literally a messiah. And we're going to refine this code together between this week and next week. But this is just to kind of get a kind of general, a sense of where we want to go. Okay? And what I want to ask us to do, right, a little bit different this week is we're going to actually begin with Dune. Okay? We're going to begin with Dune. And we're going to move from there into prayer because we're going to set prayer, which is so wildly important, in the context of Dune. Okay? So are we ready to go? Who's ready? Who's ready? Are we ready? Who's ready to go? Okay, there's a big new world. Now, if you haven't seen Dune, that's fine. Okay, I want to ask you to try and see it this week. You can see it on HBO, I believe. You can see it in a theater, right? And to try and see it, not because you like the movie or don't like the movie, right? It's actually a pretty exciting cinematic experience, but you're seeing it because you're actually participating in the evolution of the source code of culture. Culture has put over the last 50, 60 years, this movie, it was in 1965 that it began, this movie into the center of culture. It's re-landed in the center of culture. It's going to be in the center for the next couple of years. Why? What's important about it? What's the yearning in it? What are the challenges in it? Where do we need to take it? Okay? Ready to go? Here we go. So let's begin our conversation around Dune. And I want to spend, maybe the first few minutes just kind of laying out what is this? What is the movie about? And I, by the way, just saw the movie, 2 days ago, and I had a kind of intense last 24 hours. And so I'm really just kind of thinking about it right now deeply. So this is a first take. And thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, Krista, right, for that beautiful chant invitation. Thank you so much to Haley. So in we go, Dune. Okay. So one, we're in the middle of a series here in One Mountain about story and about how we work with story. So looking at this story, Dune, actually makes perfect sense in terms of the flow of conversation that we're involved in right now. Does that make sense, everyone? So we're now looking at a story and how to read a story and how to understand it through the prism, right, of first principles and first values. That's just the first step. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, so that's one. So two, the story is written by Frank Herbert in 1965. I would guess, I don't have valid information on this. I don't think we have actual information, but I would guess, 95% that Herbert wrote a lot of the story while himself he was on psychedelics. But even if he didn't write the actual story on psychedelics, he had a serious psychedelic set of experiences. Psychedelics begin in America in earnest, 50, 60 years before, but they go through a new phase in the 50s, in the kind of beatnik generation in San Francisco, number one, right? And number two, right, they get restarted again in 62, 63 with my friend Richard Alpert, right, known as Ramdas, and his co-professor at Harvard, Timothy Leary, right, who began the LSD revolution. And so the psychedelics kind of re-instantiate in the early 60s. They're going to really explode into culture like 67, and Herbert's writing in 65. That's just to kind of locate where we are, okay? So that's number one. Okay, now number two, right? Number three, Herbert writes 4 or 5 books. He passes away. His son, Brian Herbert, continues to write. He writes with, I jotted down his name before. He writes with Kenneth or Kevin. Let me just find his name for a second. I jotted it down right before we started, right? The young man, a very beautiful young man, who actually participated in the writing the Star Wars movie, Kevin J. Anderson. So Brian Herbert, right, the son of Frank Herbert, writes another series of prequels, right? In other words, meaning what happened before Dune started, how did the Emperor come to the throne, right, etc., and later sequels. So there's this huge kind of Dune world, this huge Dune enterprise. Now, I don't want to talk about particularly now, the influence of Dune on culture, which it did have, right? So for example, it's a Messiah story. Is this gentleman who I'm going to talk about who he is, I'm going to give you the characters. So even if you haven't watched Dune, I'm going to give everyone the central cast of characters in a couple of seconds. But just little spoiler, Paul Atreides, right, who's the son of Duke Leto of the House of Atreides, right, in this future imperial world. Paul is the potential Messiah. And the question of the first movie and of the first Dune novel is he the one? Remember The Matrix? Neo? Same question, is he the one? And The Matrix is very much derivative, right, of Dune. Kevin J. Anderson, who works with Brian Herbert, Frank's son, on a whole nother set of Dune novels, also writes the basic Star Wars trilogy with George Lucas. So there's this Star Wars relationship. They're kind of happening at the same time. David Lynch, who directs the first attempt at a Dune movie, which doesn't go well in 1984, actually turns down making Return of the Jedi in order to make that movie. And I'm not interested in the kind of the historical issues here, just giving you a sense that this cast of characters making this movie are very integrally related to culture. And Dune was so iconic that an enormous amount of sci-fi afterwards was derivative. Now, science fiction matters because science fiction is both a way of expressing dystopian possibility. In other words, even before anyone had any idea about existential risk or was thinking about it seriously, existential risk appeared in two major places. It appeared in the great traditions as Apocalypse and Armageddon, number one. And number two, it appeared in sci-fi. Those were actually the two places that the dystopian possibility of existential risk appeared. You know, what's new about contemporary existential risk is very fascinating and important. I don't want to talk about now. But just to understand, sci-fi is important. Sci-fi is also important for utopia. Sci-fi doesn't just generate Blade Runner, and doesn't just generate Hunger Games, right? But sci-fi can also generate a utopian vision of the world, right? So you've got 1984, and then you've got B.F. Skinner, who writes a utopia novel, right, called Walden 2. Now, it's a very flawed utopia, right, as we've talked about in other conversations. But sci-fi can also generate, right, literature can also generate utopia, which is, of course, in the great traditions, not Armageddon, but the Messianic story, right? The Garden of Eden reinstantiated, right, reincarnated on earth is the Messianic story. So the Messiah story is the utopia story, right? And the Armageddon story is the existential risk dystopia story. And we have in sci-fi, right, both of these streams, both a utopian and a dystopian stream. And Dune is at least in part utopian, right? At least that's how it begins in a very, very strong way. Okay, and it'll get to, right, to dystopian possibilities. All right, so we getting the sense here? We getting the sense? And like, stay in, everybody. Stay in the order that we're going, okay? Don't jump. Stay close in the order, right? Let's unpack it step by step, okay? Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And again, if we don't unpack it step by step, we're just going to get a little piece there and a little piece there, okay? Let's go step by step. Let's be careful. So who are the figures? So one, we're in the far future. We have an imperial, this is all important to understand the story. We have an imperial feudal system. It's run by the empire, right? Dune has been seen by people as a critique of free market capitalism. It's not, right? There is no free market capitalism in Dune, right? It's a mercantile feudal system, right? In which politics runs the economy, which is one of the disasters in Dune. That's a very important thing to keep in mind. Politics runs the economy. All of the planets and their various economic enterprises are controlled by the emperor and given to or taken from the different houses, which are like the noble houses in the medieval period, right, by the king. So it's very much a feudal economic system at play. So the emperor is Shaddam IV, number one. Number two, right, there are, let's just kind of get a sense here, right? There are several groups of people at play. So there's the Space Guild, right? And the Space Guild are this group of, super mentats. And mentats are men who have become almost supercomputers. But be careful, artificial intelligence and supercomputers themselves are outlawed in this future world. Fascinating, right? So there's an early awareness in the mid-60s of their danger, but human beings, right, particularly in this case, men become mentats, right? They take on this capacity, right, of virtually the level of artificial intelligence supercomputers. And actually, one of the key character, Paul, has a dimension of mentat. He's been trained in some sense with some mentat capacity. So those are the mentats. Right? That's the kind of superhuman, right, on the male side, and particularly the men running the Space Guild, right, have particular powers. Those powers come from the spice. The spice is a psychedelic substance that both confers in each taking of the spice a different experience, and to each person has a different interaction with the spice, and a particular property of the spice that's been accessed by the mentats who are running the Space Guild, right, is instantaneous travel at an interstellar level. So the galaxy is opened up by interstellar travel, which is facilitated by what? Anybody? By the spice. right, by the psychedelic spices. Everyone get that? That's one. So you've got the emperor, you've got the space guild, you've got the mentats, then you have the B'nai Gesserit. The B'nai Gesserit are who? Right, the B'nai Gesserit are the women, right, who are the women, not woman, the women, right, who are a mystical political guild, right, who have accessed the spice, right, to open up their own mystical powers. Those are the B'nai Gesserit, okay? Then you have, and you got to understand this architecture in order to be able to enter the story, right? Then you have the feudal houses themselves, which control different planets. And you have two major feudal houses at play here. And one is the Atreides. And the Atreides house is run by Duke Leto Atreides, okay? And his wife is Jessica. Jessica's actually not his wife, his concubine. And she's a B'nai Gesserit. And her mentor is the truth sayer to the emperor. She's kind of the mother superior of these B'nai Gesserit, these kind of mystical, sorcerer, politically adroit, magically, mystically powerful women. So Duke Leto of Atreides, head of the House of Atreides, comes together, doesn't marry Jessica. Before we get to their son Paul, who's the key player, there's the House of Harkonnen, which is the opposing house, the House of Harkonnen. Harkonnen is run by Vladimir Harkonnen and his two nephews. And Vladimir is this bloated, gluttonous figure. And within the context of feudal houses, because these are feudal houses, they're not democratic, right? But within the context of feudal houses, Leto is benevolent. He's a good man. And he's an ethical man, right? He knows how to wield power, right? He incarnates genuine goodness. Harkonnen are the villains, absolutely. And they are gluttonous, and they are the worst of, win-lose metrics, rivalrous conflict without first values and first principles, okay? And the structure of the story is when the emperor makes a big decision. What's the decision? So next piece of information. And you can't even begin without this, okay? So all the spice, which is the person who controls the spice controls the universe. The house that controls the spice controls the universe. The House of Harkonnen had controlled the spice. All the spice is located where? Anybody? I want to write it in the chat box. On Arrakis. Arrakis is the planet that holds the spice, the psychedelics. Arrakis is a desert planet, right? Completely inhospitable. And that desert planet and desert power is a very important theme. Desert power is a very important theme. That desert planet is inhabited by Arakkans who live in the city and freemen who live in the desert. The Harkonnen report that there's about 50,000, right, freemen, but actually there's millions of freemen on the planet who've actually kind of melted into the desert. They're outlaws. And the feudal system forbids the Arakkan, right, or the freemen from harvesting and selling the spice. They're not allowed to, because it's a feudal economic system, which is a big part of the story. It's a feudal, and you need all this. To do any dharma without this is absurd. We're just making stuff up. We're just doing New Age, right, or fundamentalism. And we got to actually get the story. Something's important here, okay? So the freemen and the Arakkans are not allowed economically to harvest spice. So the only people that are allowed to harvest spice are the people that the feudal emperor, right, Shamat IV, right, has given permission, which is the House of Harkonnen. So the movie opens with the emperor taking away the license for the House of Harkonnen to harvest spice on Arrakis, which is the source of the Harkonnens' power, and giving that right to the House of Atreides. But of course, this is a Judas move. This is a betrayal, because great messianic stories always have a betrayal at the core of them. The emperor is actually afraid of Duke Leto of the House of Atreides, who's benevolent and popular, right, and a real leader. So he aligns behind the scenes with Vladimir Harkonnen, right, sends him his elite troops. They want to actually get all of the House of Atreides on Arrakis, away from their home planet of Caladan, where they're much more powerful, and destroy them. Right? That's what's happening. Leto knows it's a trap, and he goes anyways, thinking that he'll have time to actually, outwit and outsmart, right, the Emperor and Baron Harkonnen. Right? That's our story. Okay, has everyone got it? That's our story. Now, just to give you a sense here, it's 1:45, just to give you a sense, okay? Just to give you a sense. Wow. Right? We got a sense of the story. A couple of things. So, and I want to we're just going to get started this week. We're just going to get started. Okay? We're just going to get started. So, and I want to, if we can, in this one mountain session, learn together how to read a story. I mean, I could just jump in and take a couple lines and talk about them, but that's not how you read a story of culture. You've got to read it carefully and understand what's happening, right? And unpack it step by step. So I want to just notice a couple of things here that are actually, complete invisible in the story. Let's just notice some themes. So the son of Jesse and Duke Leto of Atreides is Paul. Okay? Paul, of course, is also the first disciple, right? The most powerful disciple of the Christ figure. That's going to become important. And Jessica, who's of the B'nai Gesserit, which is this mystical political order of the feminine, Jessica is Paul's mother. So the mother-son nexus is very important. Does that make sense? That's always true in a messianic story. So you've got Mother Mary and Jesus. You have in the biblical story, Leah, who's the mother of Judah, which we talked about this summer, right, at our summer intensive. So Leah and Judah, mother, son, right? Mary and Jesus, right? Mother, son. So that's 2, right? 3, the B'nai Gesserit have the capacity to determine the sex of the child in the womb. There's a B'nai Gesserit secret tradition that at some point a Messiah figure will emerge, okay? And that Messiah figure, will emerge, they think, from Jessica's daughter. Jessica is instructed by the Mother Superior to have a son. She breaks that order. She's instructed to have a daughter. That daughter is supposed to birth Messiah, right? So it's a messianic story. And the sense that she can actually birth a son who will bring together the best of Leto, Duke Leto of Atreides' power gifts, right? His political gifts, his diplomatic gifts, and her mystical gifts, the feminine and the masculine together in a heros gamos, in this unique divine marriage in her son. That's what she wants to create in Paul. And so she believes that Paul is the one. Okay? Now there's a separate tradition in the Freeman people. Who are the Freeman people, friends? They live on Arrakis, and they have a separate tradition that also waits for the Messiah, and they call their Messiah Muad'Dib. Muad'Dib. And Muad'Dib means Messiah, right? Muad'Dib means Messiah. And when they meet Paul, they see signs based on their old prophecies that Paul is a Muad'Dib. Now, notice, this is very beautiful what Herbert's doing. What Herbert's doing is he's trying to intentionally bring together, just so you get a sense of how to read a story. And none of this appears in the commentary, of course, right, on Dune, at least as far as I've been able to look at it, in a couple hours of kind of searching different, readings. This is on, none of this appears, what we're about to say, and it's completely interesting and completely beautiful. So notice the name, there's a particular name given in the novel, right, to the future Messiah. And the future Messiah is called, I'm going to ask someone to write this in the chat box, Kewitz, or I can write it in, if no one can write it in. Kewi, right, Satz, thank you. And the second word, we can put those two words together. The second word is Haderach. Hadrach, Got that? H-A-D-E-R-A-C-H. Okay, fantastic. That's the name, right, in Dune, right, for the Messiah, who we think might be Paul. Now stay with me really closely. So Dune was deeply aware and deeply connected to both Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. So he names the Messiah Paul, because he doesn't want to be too obvious, right, to pick Christ, but Paul is a Christian name. But then the freemen, who are clearly, kind of think Lawrence of Arabia desert, right? The freemen are desert Arabs. Actually, it was filmed in Jordan. That's where they actually filmed it, because that's where the desert was most appropriate. But their vision of Paul is a mu'abdib, which doesn't actually mean anything formal in Arabic, but he's clearly playing on Arabic, mu'abdib. That's two. And then the word, right, let's go back to kvitzat haderach that you just wrote in, right, where it says kiwizat hadrach. So you're like, what does that mean? So that's something fascinating. So that actually is, and I don't know how Frank Herbert came across it, but that's actually a formal term in Kabbalah and Hasidism, which refers to the ability to do instantaneous travel between places. That's called kvitzat haderech. Kvitzat haderech means instantaneous travel between places. And of course, what is the power that the spice allows the Space Guild, which opens up the Imperial Galaxy? Kvitzat haderech. Instantaneous travel between spaces, between places. So that capacity is understood in Kabbalah as the capacity of the Messiah. So for example, in Kabbalah or in Hasidism particularly, there are stories of the founder of Hasidism that Buber wrote about, the Baal Shem Tov, who does kvitzat haderech, right? He does instantaneous travel, right, between places. Wow. Okay, so we're beginning to have something going on here. Okay, so he's taking this very, very esoteric, Kabbalistic Hebrew source. He's taking Mu'abdib of Islam, he's taking Paul, and he's bringing these together, right, in this vision of Messiah, right, in which the great traditions now come together. And it's a betrayal story. It's a betrayal story, right? The story revolves around betrayals, two betrayals. One betrayal by the emperor, right? The emperor betrays the house of Atreides, right? Duke Leto, right, and allies himself with the vicious Harkonnen. And number two, within the house of Atreides, there's a doctor, Dr. Yu, Y-U-E-H, who's the close doctor, right, very, very close to Duke Leto of Atreides and to Jessica, right, and to Paul, right, whose wife is being held by the Harkonnen, who threatened to dismember her, to torture her. He's faced with an impossible decision, right? And he betrays, right, the house of Atreides, and yet helps Jessica and, right, the mother, right, and Paul escape, and puts a poison gas and an implanted tooth in a drugged Duke Leto, right, who's, then given over to Baron Harkonnen, which he can use to try and kill Baron Harkonnen because it produces a poison gas. But in any case, he betrays. It doesn't work. Betrayal never works. Never works to betray, right? His wife is actually killed, right, and not freed, and he's killed. Okay, let me add one thing just so you get it. So in the Messianic tradition, the key name is Jesse, right? David, who's the father of Solomon, in the original lineage of Messiah, right? The original Messiah figure is called Judah, right? In the book of Genesis, Judah is the original Messiah figure. He's born from the unique love of his mother Leah, just like Paul Atreides is born by the unique love, right, of his mother Jesse. Then in the line of Messiah, it goes from Judah, right, to a man named Jesse. Jesse's the father of David. You get that? Jesse is the source of the Messiah line in the mystical tradition. And so, of course, Jessica is the name. Jessica is Jesse. The B'nai Gesserit, right, alludes to this Judah line, this Judah messianic line. Okay, so we're clearly, right, in the Messiah conversation, right, in a very big way. Okay, does everyone got that? That was a lot. That was a lot. Has everyone got it? That was the frame. Okay? Now here's the thing. We haven't yet said anything. We've said absolutely nothing. Right? We've just set the context for having a conversation. Okay? We've just barely set the context to have a conversation. So what we're going to do is next week, we're going to send out, right, this 25 minutes, okay, so that people can have the basic context. And then we're going to have, we should be blessed by spirit and by the politics of Eros, maybe the most exciting conversation we've ever had. It's a wildly exciting conversation about now that we have that context, what's the movie about? Right? What's actually happening here? What's actually important about this? Right? This is a movie about the Messiah. It's about political figures becoming messianic figures. It's about political figures taking psychedelic journeys. Right? Steve Jobs, right, writes in his autobiography that without taking a psychedelic journey, he couldn't have started Apple. John Mackey has spoken many times in public, my good friend, about the 30 acid trips that founded Whole Foods. Right? Right? So there's this notion of these political figures, right, accessing mystical power, becoming messianic figures. And let's go back to our code. Let's see if we can find the code. Let's go back to the code. What was our original code? Right? There's great promise in a Messiah figure and great danger in a Messiah figure. Paul Atreides, there's great promise in Paul Atreides. Right? He's got this incredible moment of destiny, and yet at the same time, he's a problematic figure. Right? Is Messiah the path to the future? And is Dune actually, stay close, an endorsement? Is it a recreation of the Messiah myth? Or is Dune a critique of Messiah? And what does it mean, right, to move from having the singular one Messiah to a democratization of enlightenment, right, to unique self as Messiah? What does it mean to democratize the idea of the Messiah? And how would that work? And what's the relationship between psychedelic and Messiah and politics and economic structures, right? These are all critical issues. And what we're going to see is there's actually 5 critical themes that are needed to actually create the evolution of the source code, the evolution of culture and consciousness, to tell the new story. And actually, Dune is playing with all 5 of those themes, sometimes precisely right and sometimes precisely wrong. But we're actually going to use the movie Dune to try and articulate next week what are the 5 components that we need to create the future. What are the 5 components of the new story? And we're going to use the Dune conversation, right, as a backdrop for that conversation. Who is Paul Atreides? Right? What is going to be gorgeous about him? Right? What's going to be important about him? What's going to be flawed? What's going to be his future generations? Right? Who is his mother? What's wildly important about her? Right? We're going to look at the incredibly wild story next week, kind of insanely exciting. Okay? But what I want to do is kind of invite everyone, just listen to this introduction, so we'll have it. And then we're going to really hit our code big time. And I'm going to come into next week and I'm not going to recapitulate any of this. Right? So we're going to send out a few times this week so that people will have both watched the movie and seen the beginning, right, of this week. And then we're going to dive directly in and have, I hope, right, with the blessing of the House of Atreides, right, a fantastic and blow away week, right? But we're not just having great fun, although it's going to be great fun. But actually, we're doing something very, very serious, which is we're doing a political, moral, spiritual, meditative act. And that is, we're going to actually look at a text of culture and look at it carefully. Now, believe me, friends, we could have taken any quote and talked about the quote and had a great conversation, but that's not real. We have to actually get a sense of there's a structure, there's a context to the story. And then I want to kind of practice together, right? Patience. Let's be kind of diligent. Let's be rigorous. And then let's be ecstatic. Then let's blow it away. So I wanted just to spend today, right? This is what we have to do. We got to see the figures. We got to see the players. I invite everyone to watch the movie once or twice this week, right? And then we'll dive in next week and try and see, right, where we're going to see in this, the analysis of this text of culture is the 5 pillars of the new society. What are the 5 pillars of the new story? What are the 5 pillars of the new society? And all of them are at play, right, in Dune. Wow. Wow, and oh my God, right? It's like crazy exciting. Crazy exciting. So we're going to finish right now with prayer. And part of prayer is the knowing that we're not alone. We're not alone in the universe. We're never alone, right? We sometimes feel quiet desperation, but if we know the true nature of reality, we're never by ourselves. We're always being held. In every place we fall into her hands. And all of our personal individual lives matter, because it's not just about the Messiah, right? It's about every single one of us who participates in what the mystics call, and we're going to talk about it next week, the stature of Messiah, Komat Mashiach, which means that all of our holy and broken hallelujahs matter. And they all count. And so we're going to listen to Leonard Cohen, but we're not going to text as we listen to him. We're not going to get something else done because we know the song and we're economically using our time. We're going to drop in. And we're going to feel into the holy and broken hallelujah of every human being who was not born into the house of Atreides. Right? Every human being, right? Every place on the planet who actually participates directly in the stature of Messiah and whose holy and broken hallelujah matters. And I'm already foreshadowing, right, one of the critiques of the movie, right, which is a particular classical notion of Messiah. And we're going to talk about what's important about that notion of Messiah, what's important about strong leadership, what's important about charismatic leadership, what's important about divinely inspired leadership, and where does it fall down? And where is it limited? And where do we need to move to the democratization of enlightenment? And where do we need to move to unique self-symphony? And where do we need to move to an expanded democratization of messianship, right? A democratization of the very messianic idea, right? Wow, right? And what does that mean in terms of how I actually experience myself when I wake up in the morning and how I experience my enlightenment? And we're going to talk about that in relationship to economics. We're going to talk about that in relationship to first principles. We're going to talk about that in relationship to the wonder of Eros, right, and the wonder of the spice. So let's go into Leonard Cohen, right, the holy and the broken hallelujah. Meet in the chat box, and we just offer prayer. Okay, and we'll read some of the prayers out loud. If you're here for the first time, right, we go to the chat box, we meet each other there, and we offer, right, every prayer. Oh my God, right? Praying together. Lady J, David, I pray for all those with terminal illness, that they're healed, if not in body, then in spirit, right? Amen. And I just came last night from the Make-A-Wish ball right here in Miami, that the board chairs of the Center for Integral Wisdom are also the chairs of this ball, Sharif Malik and Gabriel Anwar, and they did just such a gorgeous job last night for kids with terminal illnesses. Right? And just, this is beautiful, beautiful, and so wildly important. From Ronaine, I pray that I can learn to open my heart so broad that I can trust you as fully as you trust me. Right? Oh my God. Right? Renee, breathing all this love can be overwhelming, right? For sure. Vashti, I pray that all humans always feel totally held and loved in safety and blessing in their embodied lives. Peter, I pray for the unity of consciousness revealed within the individualized structure, consciousness. Becca, I pray that each of us feels as one. Terry, I pray that I might own my own spiritual authority. Amen. I pray for our new story, Krista, to be the manifestation of the utopian vision. Timothy Paul Arye, praying for deepening all in. Right? Deepening all in. Timothy Arye, what a gorgeous week you and I had together. Right? Deepening all in. Right, Shahati, I pray to be totally guided and open to receive and listen to her guidance. Benjamin, please help me opening through my contractions. Right? Amen. And set loving boundaries. Kristina Tahel, I pray for all those in Glasgow, Sweden, who seek to hold the beautiful future. Jamie, I pray to clarify my deepest heart's desire. Kathy, I pray for the explosion of outrageous love. Right? Oh my God, Suzette, I pray for a wonderful 18th birthday, right? For my son Justin, and you've got to leave and go there right now. Go, go, go. That everyone enjoys this beautiful new day. Zohar, right? Praying that all of us become Messiah together. Oriana, I pray for the world being born as the universe awakens. Lady JL, I pray for opening all hearts in the evolution of all worlds. You just, I pray that more people wake up, grow up. All right, Derek, welcome, brother. Praying for listening where to offer my gifts within community. And Derek, I look forward to talking. Let's do that, and let's do it together. Jill, Henry and I offer prayers of gratitude, of unique self-symphony expressed, right, within his immediate and extended family. Myra, right, health and love and peace. Enoch, I pray for my sister-in-law, right? Oh my God, right? And GMAG, right? I pray to be a hero for the story of life. Myra, right? Everywhere, all at once now. Raquel, for reality to dance through me. Shahati, right? Rob, pray to love in moments of hurt, right? And let's take these prayers and let's weave them and let's lift them to the sky, right? We are the people, and it's us, right? We are the people. We are the Messiah. Right? We're beginning this cultural act, this revolutionary act. We're reading through this text of culture. We've just begun. Right? We pick it up next week. Oh my God, take us inside. Right, Krista. Right? Thank you, everyone. Right? Go see Dune. We'll send everybody the first 30 minutes of this week, and let's blow it away next week. Right? We are the people. Right? We are the people. Take us inside. Oh my God.